Wait, so Ajay, if you've gotten yourself out of all these activities, what do you like doing? You know, is there anything you're passionate about in this business? And I was like, cashing checks and receiving wires. And so now, again, you're like, oh, we just lost trust. And this was a great deal. Buy at 40,000, sell at 80,000.
When you look at your business now and the fact that you're able to, make money without being actively involved, I don't know if that was kind of a one-off thing or if that's just like the way it always works now. If you're kind of just like, yeah, I don't really do anything. They're all doing it. I guess it makes me wonder, what do you do at this point? Are you just there to oversee them and make sure they're okay? Or is it just these situations at the end where you're jumping in to close the deal if needed? Sounds like that's not always required, right? Or what is your role day to day now?
Yeah, man. So I just kick my feet up and, hang out at the beach. No, I'm just, yeah, right. I was actually, funny story. I was speaking to a mastermind the other night with our good friend Eric Shiraga, actually. I think you interviewed him a few episodes ago. And I was speaking with his group and somebody asked me a similar question. They were like, wait, so Ajay, if you've gotten yourself out of all these activities, what do you like doing? Is there anything you're passionate about in this business? And I was like, cashing checks and receiving wires. Now, I would say as you delegate out activities in your business, your role evolves in two ways. Number one is you are now a problem solver. So you've heard the phrase, oh yeah, it's the exception, not the rule, right? So I step in when things are an exception. Hey, this seller's got a problem situation. Okay, I'm going to get on the phone with them. I just had a gentleman who, talking about trust. So I'm going to tell you guys the reason why we redesigned our contract. Is we had sent out pretty standard contract, same template that I think we may have gotten it from Pebble, maybe, which great. It worked for us. We did plenty of deals using that contract, not a slight at them at all. But we had sent this out to be e-signed and the seller said, I just received a contract in the mail that looks exactly like this with a very similar offer with a different company's name on it. What's going on? And so now, again, you're like, oh, we just lost trust. And this was a great deal. Buy at 40,000, sell at 80,000. I'm like, we've got 40 grand on the line. So I came back in and immediately got on the phone with the seller and basically was like, hello, Mr. Seller. I'm not going to lie to you. There's a lot of people that do what we do. We're an investment company that purchases land and we got the contract from the internet. I imagine the people who sent you that mail got it from the same place in the internet. It's a very standard boilerplate contract, but what I can tell you is we always work with a third-party attorney or title company, and we are happy to do so in whatever manner makes you feel comfortable. I am not in the business of forcing people to sell their properties. I am in the business of buying investment properties, essentially, right? So we got on the phone, and then he kind of eased up a little bit. He let his guard down, and then was like, okay, well, I'm going to want to get this to my attorney. So we followed up, and he definitely didn't have an attorney. It's just something people like to say. I told my team, hey, go find a title company in his backyard is what we're going to do, right? He wasn't in the same county as this property, but he was in the same state. So I said, go find a title company in his backyard and I'm going to give him a call. They found one. They vetted them. We have a little process to make sure the title company we work with is going to be a good title company, more or less. They left the details in our CRM and I called him back and I said, hey, Mr. Seller, I know last we chatted, blah, 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 blah. This has happened. I want you to know we found a title company. Here's what it's called. It's on the corner of X and Y Street, just south of the CVS Pharmacy and First Baptist Church, right? So you're trying to make it sound very similar to the seller because when you can communicate similarities, all of a sudden you're like-minded people, more or less, right? People like doing business with people that are similar to them. People like doing things with people that are similar to them. That's why we're drawn to certain groups and character traits and whatever else. And so, when we could communicate, hey, we're in your backyard, all of a sudden the trust level goes up, right? Hey, it's just south of the CVS Pharmacy you probably go to, all of a sudden the trust level goes up there. So anyways, because of that though, we went back and had a designer redesign the contract because we didn't ever want that to happen again. What was the initial question you asked? You asked what I do all day. It's a lot of solving problems like that when there's an exception and not the rule. I still review every single deal once we get an offer accepted. And then last and most important, Seth, is I solve for bottlenecks now. Okay. So again, Alex Hormozi taught me this beautiful concept called constraint theory. And it's our job as executives to identify what is the constraint of the business right now. What's the reason we're not doing more deals? What's the reason we're not scaling, right? And this is operating under the assumption that your goal is to scale. So if you're sending out the same amount of mail every month, you're probably not trying to scale necessarily. But actually, that being said, I'm going to rescind a piece of that statement because there's some sales process involved in that. My job as an executive now is to make sure that I remove constraints from the business, right? The constraint of sales process to get a contract signed, that was a constraint, right? Not being able to keep track of where our leads came from, that was a constraint. And so my job now is really just to look for constraints. You really need to invite your team into sharing, hey, what do you not like about your job right now? Is there anything that's stressing you out? Is there anything we could change? If you could change one thing about your job, what would it be? And you got to word this stuff in different ways because you don't want to just be like, hey, what do you not like doing? And they're going to be afraid to speak up, right? But if you can get your team to constantly give you feedback and again, monitor the metrics, look through your CRM, see how things are going, you're going to find some bottlenecks. So we just found one recently where a little embarrassed to admit this, but because we're doing some double closings, we started selling properties on our own, meaning not with realtors because we don't own the properties yet, but we have permission from the sellers to market the properties. And so that means we have to manage our own buyer leads, but that doesn't mean Ajay is going to manage the buyer leads and we don't have anybody to manage the buyer leads. So we had our acquisitions manager managing buyer leads, which I'm embarrassed to say because it's very different. And it was fine when we had one or two properties that we were managing, but it's gotten to a place where we just have several now. And so I looked through her call logs and she has different numbers for buyer versus seller lines. And I saw 70 to 80% of her day was being taken up by buying leads. And I was like, that's an issue. We are going to cause a cycle in this business where we acquire a bunch and then sell a bunch. And we're going to yo-yo is what Clint Turner always calls it, right? Yo-yoing in your business. And so immediately I'm like, why didn't anybody communicate this out? Because they don't want to say they're overwhelmed or stressed or anything like that. Great. I'm going to make an executive decision. I called up Ben. I said, Ben, we're going to go hire a transaction coordinator / disposition VA, right? So then we were on a call with Nix and Zoe and said, hey, do you guys have any friends? We really like hiring from within if we can, because there's an extra element of accountability when they bring in a friend on both sides, right? They're only going to recommend people that are going to do a good job. On the other side of that, the person doesn't want to make their friends look bad, friends or family, whatever it is. You have this increased layer of trust, again, when you kind of hire from within if you can, if they have any referrals or references for the role. But we had that call 2 days ago. Ideally, we're going to be hired in the next 3 weeks. There's this good saying I stole from Clint. He says, usually the best talent currently has a job, right? You don't want the person that's been unemployed for 6 months. There might be a reason why. You want the person that's an A player who either isn't being compensated as such or it just isn't being taken care of or treated the best, and you can bring them into a better work environment and give them a role to empower them and succeed to really, reach their potential and enjoy what they're doing a lot more.